Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, where we explore the real stories behind the risks, rewards, and revelations of entrepreneurship. Today, I'm joined by Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of FranCoach, a national consulting firm that helps aspiring entrepreneurs navigate the world of franchising. He's also the host of the Franchising 101 podcast, where he's made it his mission to demystify franchise ownership and guide people toward finding the right business fit. In the first half of our conversation, Tim shares his personal journey, how he transitioned from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, the highs and lows of building a business from scratch, and most importantly, the powerful lessons he's learned along the way. Then we switch gears. Tim pulls from his deep well of franchising expertise to offer practical advice for anyone thinking about business ownership through franchising, whether you're curious, cautious, or ready to take the leap. If you've ever wondered whether there's a franchise that fits your goals or if entrepreneurship might be closer than you think, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hey, Tim, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, Mike, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
As am I. So let's start at the beginning. What led you to launch FranCoach, and was entrepreneurship always on your radar?
So, what led me to it was desperation, a little dumb luck. I think like a lot of folks that we work with that have been in the corporate world for any length of time, frustration can bubble up. And then really my last job, our whole office basically got shut down due to some fraud that was committed by other people in the office. So the rest of us were like, now what? And so it was transition. It was transition that was no fault of my own, professionally. And then I also had a little personal transition is, my 12-year-old son was one-ish back then. And we were like trying to figure out the super fun co-parenting things, right? And so kind of all of this out. And for us, I was a terrible employee. I would be in a way worse one then because I wanted to always be kind of in control and be the boss. And so that's where I'd never seriously looked at anything entrepreneurial, but that's how my brain worked. And I just kind of stumbled onto franchising. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know there were people out there that could help you figure it out, but I just got kind of connected to somebody and they gave me a couple little tips and I'm like, what the heck? Let's try it. And here we are 11 plus years later.
Wow. Well, that just brought up a few things in my head. One is, I find it humorous when you say you wanted to be your own boss. I also did want to be my own boss. But once you get into your own business, you realize you are the farthest thing from your own boss. Your bosses are your customers, your vendors, your banks, the IRS, the weather. Everything, right? You are just like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, all the time. It's funny, at least in the early days, how little control we seem to have over our success and or even our destiny at that point, because we're just answering to everybody. Where if you're working in a cubicle, you might have one direct report, or one boss that you report to, and that's it. But it's funny when I hear people say the reason I want to start my own business is to be my own boss. I'm like, have other reasons, because that's a little bit of a fallacy, at least in the early days, right? You're selling your soul.
Absolutely. No, you're correct. And the one thing we always from like our clients are thinking about franchise ownership, but it's still you're a business owner. It's always control is the word, right? Like I don't want to be the boss. I want more control over my life.
Right.
Freedom, flexibility, right? You're going to work, let's be honest, you're going to work your tail off as a business owner, but you're doing it for yourself, more on your own terms, with all of these things. And then being able to, I think you have to kind of want to be the decision maker. It's one thing to sit there and be that armchair quarterback where you're going to go, oh, my boss should have done this. And if I was there, I would have done this, this, and this. okay, it's one thing when you say that, but do you really want to be that person? Because that's a whole different ballgame when you're in that seat and everybody's looking to you for last thing. Um, that's that's something people might think about a little bit, but not everybody really wants that because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, we're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of FranCoach in a little bit, mostly the second half of the show. But one thing that did strike me about your business is if I wanted to open, I'm just going to say Subway. I'm not picking on Subway at all, but I'm just going to say Subway because that's kind of the poster child of franchises. You know, there's tens of thousands of them. If I wanted to open a Subway and I reached out to Subway, if I didn't know anything about franchising and I just reached out to Subway, I would imagine a conversation might go something like, is this the right fit for me? Subway says, well, do you have the money to invest? Yes. It's perfect. This is perfect for you, right? They may not answer questions which is with as much transparency and authenticity as maybe you would if you were advising someone on a franchise, right? Because you know who. I'm not saying Subway's a bad franchise. I'm just saying you know the better franchises from the less better franchises. You know what pitfalls there could be. You know what contracts look like. Right? I mean, you are kind of agnostic because if they buy a Subway or if they buy a whatever, you don't have skin in the game past that point. You're not getting a commission from these people, I would assume. So, your relationship is directly with your client, and you're going to provide the best advice specifically for that client. Am I right in that?
Oh, no, 100%. It is. I would say, like, look, I don't care which franchise people start. And then I'm like, that sounds harsh. I don't mean it harsh. It's just, it doesn't matter. I'm not the one that has to get out of bed and go do it every day.
Right.
It's each individual person. Right. And so but some of those kind of fallacies or myths that are out there, it's like, oh, like people ask me this all the time. What's the best franchise? No such thing. What's the best industry? Doesn't exist, right? Like, how can that be? But it's weird. It's kind of, I love cheesy analogies, and like I might bust out some dad jokes at some point as we go through this. But it's like dating, and you got to find your person. Nobody else has to think that's their person. You have to think it's yours. And it's the same thing with franchising. So it's a lot of what we do is just help people kind of reverse engineer their mindset of trying to hunt for something when before they even know what the heck it is that they really want. So it's just totally different way of thinking.
Yeah. Before FranCoach, what did your career look like? And how did those experiences shape the business that you would eventually build?
Yeah, well, I think in many ways this why this has worked out is because it was perfect for my brain. As I was an athlete growing up, all through college. I coached and taught for a while, so my brain just is wired teacher, coach, athlete thing. And then I got in the corporate world and did a lot of recruiting and training. So all this really is, and kind of our whole focus on with FranCoach, right? So we want to properly educate people on what this is all about. And most people, they don't know nothing about nothing when it comes to franchising. So it's kind of cool is we get to work with smart, successful people, but they don't know really much, if anything, about franchise ownership. It's scary, right? It's all the unknowns. And so it's really just everything that I've done is teaching, coaching, guiding people along the way, kind of the recruiting and also finding the talent, so to speak. Just kind of, again, it's why this work that's all about, we tell our clients, is all about that get out of bed test. You're the one that's get your butt out of bed and go do it every day. For me, I like smart people. I like being able to teach and coach and guide them. And I would be terrible. And the couple of times I've done anything in a sales role, I suck at it. Because I don't like being that person. I just want to get to know somebody, help them figure out something, help them learn something new. And then in our case, sometimes that helps them completely redirect their entire existence.
You say you suck at sales. You actually don't. If you define sales as someone who connects solutions to problems, which is what you're doing, then you're one heck of a salesman, right?
there's that. I'm not the person who's going to ask anybody for money.
Right.
Yeah,
You're not the closer.
I
You're
should,
not the overcome objections and get the sale
uh,
and ask yes questions and all the BS that we hear
well,
with sales.
no, it's funny. I always, in fact, in prior roles in the corporate world where I was training inside salespeople and managing them, like, how do I overcome objections? And I'm like, don't. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, just like they've got questions. Get them to ask the questions, answer the question. They're going to overcome it themselves, or they're not, right? And so there are times we all want to get in our own way and create problems and drama, and so for us, it's like then maybe franchise ownership isn't for you, and that's okay too. It's just being able to just honestly help people think differently and then learn something new is what we're going to do. If that ends up with them being a franchise owner, sweet. If not, I'm still going to say congratulations, because we've accomplished our goal of helping you determine if this is the right thing or not. And maybe it's not now, maybe it will be down the road. Who knows?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What was your this is it moment? The point where you knew you were all in at starting your own business? Was there a particular, other than being pissed off and being, desperate to change what you were doing? At what point did you go, this is why I'm going to do this?
So I remember early on when I first started this, I literally was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it always worked. So now all of a sudden working like remote, and this was 11 years ago. We all do it now, right? But literally was sitting, like, my office was one half of my kitchen table. I ate on one half, and then my office was on the other half. And I'm just grinding, and I don't know what I'm doing. Like some may say I still don't know what I'm doing, but I really didn't know what I was doing then. And I'm calling people and calling people, and it's just not going well. And I had these like little half pieces of paper. Like, this is like how destitute I think I was at the beginning. Was my last job let me keep my laptop, right? Thank goodness. I had a ream of that I possibly borrowed indefinitely of like printer paper. That was my notes. And I just wrote down on a piece of paper, like in block letters, and I still have it on my wall, the letters THTW. And I mean, I'm frustrated. I still had hate at the time, so I'm starting to pull it out. And THTW is, this has to work. And I just taped it on the wall next to me. And every time I was frustrated, right? Or like, oh my gosh, what have I done? What am I doing? I just kind of glanced at the wall. I looked at those letters. Okay. Like, I just didn't give myself any choice, right? Because from a life standpoint, what I needed my existence to look like, I needed flexibility. I needed something that I could run on my own, that I could have the remote ability to live anywhere in the world, and like, have the relationship with my kid, who was a little bitty then. He's 12 now. He didn't really care, but you know what I'm saying? But back then it was just really that, I just distinctly remember where I was in that moment and writing that down and sticking that up on the wall. And it's literally in a cheesy little frame, and it stays on my wall in the office every now. I don't have those moments as often anymore, but as an entrepreneur, you're always going to have those days or those moments where you're like, what have I done? And then it was just, I would look at that and kind of put my head down and get back to work, because I just, in my mind, I had no choice. I had to make it work, and kept working until it did.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember why you started it, and to have a compelling, overwhelming reason to keep going. Because as you stated, and as every entrepreneur has experienced, the system is designed almost like boot camp. It's designed to break you and rebuild you. And
Yeah.
when you join the military, you sign a contract. So when they break you, you just can't say, "Hey, you know what? Not what I thought. I'm out of here. See you later, guys." You're stuck there, and we need to have the "you're stuck there" mentality. in order to keep persevering and to be willing to be kind of broken down and rebuilt in a more suitable manner. Mine was two things. Number one, I borrowed money from my dad, who owned his house free and clear, but he took a equity loan from his house to loan me money to start the business. So, if I had failed, if I had borrowed money from a bank and failed, I would have felt bad for a couple of days. But the banks, they're grown-ups. They understand risk and reward, and if they lose some, they lose some. If they make some, they make some. But I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. I would feel bad, but I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. If I did that to my father, I'll tell you, every holiday get together would be extremely awkward, particularly knowing my dad. And the other reason I could not fail was when I left my former employer and started my company, which turned out to be a competitor to my former employer. They sued me. And we actually had a trial, and I was found not liable on everything, but it totally wiped me out financially. All the startup money that I borrowed from my father, which I had to pay back, morally, ethically, and practically speaking, all that went away. So I had the overwhelming desire to pay my father back, and I also had the overwhelming sense of revenge to get back at my former employer. So there were times when I should have, on paper, I should have said, we're done, we're out of money, we are completely 100% insolvent. But I just kept going because I could not fail. I couldn't stand it if I failed for a number of emotional reasons and practical reasons. So I think that's really important to have that overwhelming sense of purpose and drive and tenacity and all of those things.
The why is the reason, right? And whatever everybody's is, and like I'll tell our clients when they're at that point and they're about to start the franchise or sign the franchise agreement, they're going to have a little moment where they're going to hyperventilate, right? Oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Sure.
And like, don't just say it, don't think it, literally write down why are you doing this and keep that somewhere, because you're going to have a moment, and you're going to have moments, plural, at the beginning where you're like, what in the world have I just done?
Yeah.
But if you can go back to that, and that was always the easy thing for me, it was my kid, right? It's like everything I was doing was to be able to build that life and that relationship. And I mean, exceeded anything that I ever thought like this was going to turn into. I just needed to make a little money and be flexible. And then we're able to turn this into a whole big thing now. So, but it was really that why, and just the there's no choice. Like, I'm going to figure it out. This has to work.
Yeah. Was there, or what was your first big win within FranCoach that made you feel like you're over the hump, or it was enough motivation to just keep you going?
Well, in some ways, I'm not sure that I'm ever there really for sure, but the first client that I had that became a franchise owner is, and I probably got that I got that a little quicker than is the norm in the industry, and not because I just got lucky and I worked with a franchisor. In fact, they literally have to reach out to him today. It was one of the very first people I met. Really kind of unbeknownst to him, he was mentoring me without probably knowing he was doing that. But I'm like, oh, okay. Like, there really is, there's a method to the madness. There's the metrics work, right? There are all these franchises out there that you've never heard of that are like, oh, okay, well, they got their stuff together. That's a good thing. That was really good, but it felt like it didn't feel real at that point. Like, I literally, back then is when we got paid by check, right? And I took a picture of the check because I never made that much money in my life. And so okay, well, that's pretty cool. It took a few more months where all of a sudden there were within a couple of weeks, there were 3 of our clients that signed franchise agreements at the same time, where I'm like, okay, now this, I felt like that was replicable then, and gave me the kind of the, I think really the comfort that I could do this. It was still, everything at the beginning is so up and down with how things go. And even 11 years in, I'll get I'll get our deals done in like chunks, right? It's just the way it works sometimes. But it gave me that second batch a few months later. I was like, okay, right? Like I really can do
You
this.
can do this. Yeah.
I still didn't know what the heck I was, but it just gave me a little bit more confidence of like, yeah, this is because at the beginning I didn't really even know this was a real thing, and so that helped immensely. And but it was that first one and that relationship, like, and that was a person that's made a big impact in my life, um, personally and professionally throughout, whether he even necessarily realizes it. But that next little batch was okay. We really do. We got this,
Yeah.
and obviously still times where it was a struggle and things like that. But that was the confidence booster, really.
So, were there ever times when, well, this is almost a rhetorical question. Were there times when you just thought about giving up? And assuming the answer is yes, because I'm sure that's the answer, what kept you going besides the, THTW sign? What made you stick with that sign?
Um, and I don't know that I ever really thought about quitting. I never gave myself a thought that it was possible. And
Good.
again, at the beginning, it was really all directed towards my son and having that
Mm.
the freedom and flexibility that I needed from a lifestyle standpoint to co-parent where I was going to need to live, which is in the middle of freaking nowhere. And so I just like that was the driver, is to try to not suck as a parent. Basically, was my whole
Your
still my
goal is not to
motivation.
suck. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sure. But no, it was honestly, it was him at the beginning, and um, then it's just kind of grown into so many more things. But that was honestly, it was just that simple.
What's the one mistake you made early in your business that you now look back on as a valuable learning experience?
Just one. So I
Keep
mean,
it to
Mike,
three or four
clearly, I've
hundred.
I've never made a mistake. I don't know what you're talking about. So,
Right, right.
um, I think one of the things I would look at is when we started to grow, and because at the beginning it was just me, had some support people, but I was the only kind of client facing coach on our team. And I just had this overwhelming like desire to like, I, there was a, there's, and I still do, there's a lack of really solid training and support in this industry. And I'm like, I think I can do it. And so brought on that first person, and without like in my head, I know I can do this, but really had next to nothing um like down on paper or anything like that. And it worked. So which was great in some ways, also kind of maybe sometimes bad in other ways, because then I kept expanding. And that's where I think as we grew, um I might have been in wing it mode and figure it out mode a little bit more than taking like backing off of kind of like being the doer and still working with all my clients, but trying to grow a team and build a training platform and all of the things. There's only so many hours in the day, and I don't wear a red cape with the letter S, right? And so I spread myself a little too thin. And so going back, and it's so hard to do when we talk to franchise owners all the time. When you're the doer and you need to elevate yourself up to build the team, that's as scary as starting it from the beginning, because you're like, no, no, I'm the one. I need to be doing all of this because this is how we make the money, versus stop doing it, build everything else up, and then you get the systems in place and then get the people. I was getting the people and kind of trying to like halfway get the systems in place. Um, Going back, if I could do that all over again, I'd really just like not be on the phone for 2 stinking weeks and just get everybody I needed to build the systems the right way then. Because there's still some things where there's a Band-Aid here, there's a Band-Aid there. There's still some remnants of doing it maybe the wrong way 3.5 years ago that still kind of bite us in the backside once in a while now. So I would definitely just like get, when it's time to get out of being the doer, don't second guess it, just get out. Know you're going to go backwards a little bit, but it's long term. It's how you're really going to grow smartly and properly. And I did not do that very well.
Well, I don't think anyone that starts a business does that very well, because when I started mine, and everyone I know that has started a business kind of was a victim of their own success. They are doing everything. They're chief cook and bottle washer, and you can't scale that way because there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only one of you. And it would be cheaper for me, not wiser, but cheaper for me to just do it myself than to hire someone to do it. If I could do it,
Yes.
even if I couldn't do it well, hey, I didn't have to pay anyone, right? So, and then you find that you're just spinning in circles. You're a hamster on a wheel, right? And you're not really you're working hard, but you're not really going far. And
Right.
And then there comes that aha moment, usually out of desperation, where you just have to like bite the bullet and hire someone, and then eventually the business scales. And I had to learn the hard way the difference between growth, business growth, and scale. Scale is when everything rises. Growth is just when I just need more revenue. Great,
Right.
I can bring in. I'm a good salesman. I can bring in more revenue. None of it's profitable, but that's not today's problem. That's tomorrow's problem. Today's problem is I have to cover payroll. So it took me years to even learn the acronym SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. I'm like, why do we need that? I already know. Everything in our business was tribal. It was a very tribal business, and we're a manufacturing company. We build sophisticated equipment for the electronics industry, and you can't do tribal for very long, because there were times when, in the early days of our business, maybe the first few years, someone would call. They have a machine that we built, and they would call and they would have a problem, and we didn't have any documentation over how we built that machine. And for the first few years, almost every machine was a little bit different, because we just kind of made it up as we went along. And, it would be embarrassing because I'd have to ask the person to, snap a picture of this particular part of the machine and send it to me so I would know, what part we used on that day, right? Or that hour of that day. And, now we have whole teams of people that do that. But that's a lesson I think every business owner, particularly ones that start something from scratch, not ones that are franchise owners, because someone already figured that out by the time they started franchising their business.
True, but they still have to follow the plan, and it's one of the big mistakes that people make is even in the franchising world of like, I know it's time for me to elevate out of this role, but like, and it's but anytime somebody starts saying but, like whatever comes afterwards is probably just some big old excuse, right? Like, well, but no, but you don't understand, but I gotta, but like, just stop.
But just negates everything that was said before, right?
Correct, right? Just say you don't want to do it or you're scared. Like, those are acceptable answers than all of the other things. And I knew it at the time too. But that is the hard part of being that true entrepreneur is like, I didn't have a game plan. I had to make it up, right? And you make it up and you hope it works, and hopefully the strategy in the world. And so sometimes it does, but when it doesn't, you have to be able to, one, realize it doesn't, and then you have to go, oh crap, now what? Right? I thought that was going to work. It didn't. Now I got to come up with plan B or C or D or E or wherever we are with that. And that's rewarding when it works. Frustrating as all get out when you're stuck there and you're the part you wanted to be the boss and you wanted all the control, and then now you're like, what do I do now? And that's definitely the harder part of that entrepreneur stuff, especially when you are trying to not just grow, when you're trying to really scale.
You've been in business for 11 years, I believe you said. What, if anything, would you do differently?
So there are times I'm like, I would have never brought anybody else on and just done this myself.
Right.
worked less, made more money. But no, I think I really just think the bigger thing is when we started to grow is there are some things in there that we did well, um, are replicable. But again, it was, I was probably more people focused than system focused. And the system is what's going to help rise everybody up.
People
And
come and go. The system is the system, right?
the system is the system, right? And so, and again, there's still, we're going through another real, like actual pretty aggressive growth spurt now. And a big part of that is, yes, there were some more people we brought on board, but largely to like kind of get me out of the equation of like all of the stuff and the things that are here in my head. Then again, we've got to have them documented. We've got to have like, or my thing is now with our team, it's like, well, this person over here does this. Great. Well, what if they get ran over by a bus? Like we're kind of stuck because that was all in their head versus, aha, here
Mm-hmm.
we've got it here centralized. And um, we're getting better at that, but still have some room to grow. But again, if I could go back 3, 4 years ago, like it would have been systems, everything out of my head somewhere, and then how much easier it would have been for everybody else coming in. And again, it's kind of worked out, but like, gosh, how much easier, more efficient could it have been with if we just had everything in place first?
Yeah, you kind of want to avoid the WWTD syndrome, which is what would Tim do syndrome, right?
Yes.
You, what would Tim do? Tim would open the book to page 192 and read the standard operating procedure, right? And if that procedure changes, the procedure changes. It gets documented, memorialized. It took me years to figure that out. You've helped countless people find the right franchise. Well, probably not countless. I'm sure you know the count, but lots of people find the right franchise. What's the first question someone should ask themselves before considering franchise ownership?
Are you sure? Right. So
Are you crazy?
you
Right.
nuts? Don't you know these things all fail? They take millions of dollars.
You're going to get up
No,
7 days a week and make sandwiches for a living. Right.
I think it's really, do you like, there's got to be a little pain in most cases, right? So do you really want to make a change, right? Do you really want to be the one that is in charge, or is it just kind of fun to think about? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think one of the biggest intangibles with entrepreneurship is we use the letters FSO. It's figure stuff out.
Stuff
There's
out.
normally a
Yes.
different S word involved with that, but are you the person that wants to figure stuff out? And
But by the way, Tim, I do tell all my guests they're welcome to swear on the show because if you don't know how to swear, start a business. You will learn how to swear, right? You will totally learn how
yes,
to swear. It's a prerequisite.
there is someone on our team that we are trying to desperately to get her to swear, like really swear, not just like the ones my kid gets away with.
Right.
And boy, she just won't do it, but we're gonna get her there at some point. But
Yeah, exactly.
you've got to. Yes, the franchise has a whole plan laid out, but they're not telling you every minute of every day exactly what to do. They're giving you the broad brushstrokes of, this is how you make the sandwich, or this is where you do this or where you do that. But there's all sorts of things outside of food, but everybody's mind goes to food. And you
Sure.
mentioned Subway. If I own a Subway and like all of a sudden on Saturday, we ran out of napkins, right? Well, like, who am I calling within Subway corporate on a Saturday? I ran out of napkins. Like, they're going to hang up on me, right? Well, one, I probably messed up the ordering, right? Somewhere along the way, but okay, well, I got to address that problem. But right now I've got customers coming in. What am I going to do? Just use your shirt sleeve. You'll be totally fine, right? Or I got to figure it out. Do I call another Subway owner, right? Hey, can I buy some napkins off of you? Go to Costco, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but I have to figure out a solution in that situation. And not everybody really wants that. That is daunting and scary. So I think more than anything, you have to kind of think of that. And then I'm always going to go back to really is what we start as we build out for folks is why are you here talking to me? What is it about owning a franchise will make your life better? So what does good look like for you? Doesn't matter what it looks like for me. You're the one that has to do this. So it's a lot of self-reflection. Actually, we put people through to understand the why and kind of the if they should do this. But those are kind of the first couple things I want people to start thinking about.
Sounds like in addition to being a franchise coach, you have to be a little bit of a therapist. You kind of got to put them on the couch and figure out their headspace, right?
A little bit. I'm probably the last person that should be in that role, but it is definitely a little bit of that because I always tell people we're gonna get you outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And guess what? That's not comfortable. And we're gonna ask questions and make you think about things that are totally different. Because when you're in the corporate world, whatever your industry is, and the longer you've been in that industry, the more it is going to define you moving forward. We can sit here and go, I have all these transferable skills. They would be great over here in this other industry or in this other role. I mean, it ain't happening, right? But in franchising, they don't care about the industry experience. They don't need you to be the doer. They need you to run the business. So it allows people, it's almost refreshing sometimes to just start from scratch. And like, I will take notes. And when we get to this point, I literally have a blank page up. It's kind of symbolic of this is a blank slate. Like, Mike, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, we don't think as adults, we're going to ponder, what do I want to be when I grow up? But it's kind of the freedom that you get with looking at a franchise. So you can make it whatever the heck you want. Nobody's going to look at you. I've never once in 11 years asked somebody to see their resume, nor have I ever had a franchisor ask, yeah, did you get Bob's resume? Like, no. Like, I'm going to look at somebody's LinkedIn profile just out of curiosity, but it's put a face to the name or, where'd they grow up or go to school or whatever.
I've hired and interviewed hundreds of people over my career, and I never look at a resume. They always bring one in, they slide it across the conference room table, and I politely sit it, next to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look down just to make sure I'm talking to Tim. Is it Tim? Because I was just talking to Sally, I was just talking to Bob, I was talking to Dave.
Yeah.
But resumes are everything they want you to think about them, and I just prefer conversation over
it's somewhere between fiction and science fiction. What's on the resume
totally.
and the link, and even on LinkedIn, I'm the person that's gonna go, where'd you go to school? And more from a curiosity standpoint of like, oh, do I like their football team or what's their mascot or what? Like, do I know somebody there? It's more just like the get to know the human piece versus what they do, and it throws people off because again, when you're trying to get a job in the real world, it is your resume. It is there. It is answering the questions the way you think. Mike's interviewing me and he asked me a question. Oh, what's he want me to answer? What answer gets me the job?
Right.
And
it's a game. It's a game.
It is.
It's like
I
speed
tell
dating.
people in our process when we're starting to build out what it looks like, we literally start that conversation and I say, this is not a job interview. Turn off your corporate brain. We're not we're putting pins and stuff. This is me and you having a conversation. So tell me the truth. If I say, hey, Mike, do you want to do X as an owner? And you're in your brain, you're going, heck no, then tell me that. That doesn't mean you can't own a franchise. It's just going to direct us to which one.
Sure.
And sometimes it takes people a minute to, wait, are you serious? Really? This is how it works? And becomes refreshing. And then they just get to be open to the possibilities versus focused on the past, which is not always fun.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about becoming a franchisee?
Millions of dollars to do it, that it's all food, restaurants. I think there's a weird feeling of failure with this, even though statistically, after 5 years, roughly 90% of franchise businesses are still open and operating. So, which is basically the same number of marriages that are still intact after 5 years. So, I think that, and then industry comes up a lot, right? I've done this, therefore my franchise needs to be in that, right? I love puppies, therefore my franchise needs to be about puppies. Maybe, but I'm telling you, it's like 9 times out of 10, people start a franchise and it's in an industry that they have little to no experience in. And again, when you've been applying for jobs and you know you are siloed based on what you've done your entire career, the thought that your industry doesn't matter and it can be something totally different and that you know nothing about, that's hard to grasp, right? But you hear franchising, you mentioned Subway, but almost anybody you ask, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, right? So, listeners out there, what's the first franchise that comes to mind, right? It's probably food. If it's not Subway, it's probably McDonald's, right?
Sure.
Maybe it's Dunkin', depending on what day we're sitting at, what we're hungry for is where our mind is going to go. That's a minuscule percentage of things. We for our team alone, we're partnered with well over 600 franchises in like 85 industries, right?
Wow.
It's you name it. People will ask sometimes, "Hey, are there any franchises in this industry?" I don't care what they say. My answer is yes.
Yeah.
So there's something out there for them. Probably things that they do business with, see every day. They just don't realize it's a franchise because as a consumer, we don't care. We just want to be the consumer, but they're all over the place. It's almost like um it's like 800, 900 billion dollar industry in the United States. That's how much revenue is generated by all the franchises in the United
Wow.
States.
I'm not sure if you know this company or this person, but I interviewed recently on this show Bennett Maxwell, who is the original founder of Dirty Dough,
Okay. Yeah.
a cookie company.
Yep.
And they got sued by their competitor. I think it was Crumble that sued them, and they made the best out of that lawsuit because it was total David and Goliath, right? It was a stupid lawsuit, at least from the way he describes it. But they have an interesting model compared to other food-related franchises. What traits or mindsets do you constantly see in successful franchise owners? Is there a common denominator, personality type, or mindset?
No, I mean, we talked about the FSO and having kind of that grit because things are going to go wrong. The two biggest things that you'll really hear basically every franchise say, like, "Oh, what are you looking for in an owner? Are you going to follow the plan, and you're going to put forth the effort?" And you're like, "That's it? Yeah, really, that's it." Now that sounds simple, but it's like if I said, "Hey, Mike, can you follow a plan?" Well, yeah, everybody can. Mike, are you gonna? Right? Are you going to follow the part that you want to versus the other? It's not a cafeteria. Follow the plan. Otherwise, don't be a franchise owner. And you're supposed to working 40 hours a week and you're working 20. You can't bitch when your franchise isn't doing well, right? Or you're a semi-absentee and you need to be contributing 15 and you're doing 5. Like those things seem really, really simple, but it's those two things. And then from there, it's the overall thing is, I just go back to like, stuff's gonna go wrong. Do you want to be the person that's making those decisions, that's figuring things out on a daily basis? And people sometimes they think they do, but then maybe not so much. But it's really follow the plan and put forth the effort. Seems simple, but that can struggle for folks. And almost every franchise owner at some point will make a mistake early on that is 100%. If you ask a franchise owner, what would you do differently at the beginning? They're going to tell you something, but it is some part of that plan that they deviated from and then kind of got back on the right path.
Yeah. You host the Franchising 101 podcast. Are there any recurring questions or concerns that your guests and listeners bring up just most often?
I think there's a couple of things that come up anytime we have one of our franchisor partners or anybody in franchising on. I always kind of ask how they got into franchising, and it's like these wildly random stories that nobody really got into with any intent, right? And then they're here, and then they never leave, right? So I think you can look at it industries and organizations at tenure, right? And if people are in it and they're in it long term, maybe there's a reason. If they're in it and they're out, or we've all seen businesses that have tons of turnover, there's probably a reason they do. So you see that. And then when we'll do some where we have our clients that have gone through this journey and then become franchise owners. And I'll always hear from future people how that impacted them, right? Because it's like, oh, I listened to your podcast with Bob, and Bob's story resonated with me, right? Well, Bob can do it. I can do it. So they can see themselves in those real examples of people that at the beginning they're like, who the heck is this old bald guy named Tim? Why am I talking to him or his team and trusting him? And then there's no way I can do this. There's no way franchising is for me. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. And now I'm about to start a franchise. I don't know anything about how is that possible, all the fear, and then they do it. And so for everybody listening to kind of have those stories are always the most impactful. They're also the fun ones, because you get to see from where they were in their life, their why of doing this to how it has changed for them moving forward is always super cool.
In the example you just gave, for kind of reoccurring concerns, that is a perfect segue to my next question. For someone listening or watching right now, who's maybe sitting on the fence, maybe they're burned out with their current job, whatever, maybe they're just unsure whether they should, move ahead. What's your best advice for taking that first step toward ownership through franchising?
Oh, that's a great question. FranCoach.net would be,
I had a feeling that might be the answer.
or the Franchising 101 podcast, or if I'm going to go all shameless plug, they like to read, here's Becoming a Franchise Owner by yours truly. So, which is cool, Mike, because
the old ball guy.
The old bald
the old
guy,
bald guy wrote that. Yes,
literally wrote the book on becoming a franchise owner. So, no, I think there's to work with us. There's never any fee for our clients. We're kind of like a recruiter model, so we get compensated by the franchisors. So if there's any level of pain and curiosity, I was like, hop on a first call. Like whether it's me or anybody on our team, we're going to spend 15, 20 minutes, get to know you a little bit, what's going on in your life that got you on the phone, walk you through how we go through the process. And then I'm going to ask, like, do you want to learn more? If so, here's what happens. If not, that's okay. Right. It's like, we all have 20 minutes in our life, right? Like we're doing this for, like my kid calls it Facebook scroliosis, right? Like we're all spending that time doing something that's not really beneficial. Take that 15, 20 minutes and talk to us. And the worst that happens is you now already know this isn't for you at the moment. Okay, great. You learned something new. That's not going to kill us, but maybe it is. And then you just kind of keep trucking along in the process, right? So it's to simplify things, but just have a chat with us and learn a little bit and see if it's worth exploring further.
So if I was interested in franchising, and if I knew nothing about franchising, and I reach out to Tim and FranCoach and said, okay, I'm not quite sure what I want. I don't think I want to do food. I think I want to do electrician stuff or plumbing or house cleaning or something, gardening, landscaping. How much time do you put in with me to, couch time, therapy, headspace, all that, and then practical stuff? Is this like a 1 hour conversation and then boom, or is it fairly in depth?
Yeah, no, there's really 3 steps before we start doing the research. And we'll have that first call. There's a profile we have people fill out, but we have a very thorough hour-ish conversation, where, in fact, was doing a training the other day and recorded one of these calls we had, and our CRM has a new kind of tool to it where it's like transcript and analyzing or whatever, and it was like something like where Tim asked 57 questions, Bob asked 4, right? So it's a very one-sided game of 20 questions of us trying to dig to understand that person, right? And once we have that built, that's most important. But secondary is understanding all the behind the scenes, the proprietary stuff with the franchises, and not just by the industry, but even within the industry, you can have two franchises that look the exact same to the consumer, and they can be completely different behind the scenes, right? And so, and you can't Google, that's not stuff you can Google. You're going to get consumer stuff when you do that. So we know all those things. So now once we figured out what you're all about, we know the brands, even in the same industry, to be able to have that kind of create that alignment and create that match, right? And so once we connect people to the franchisors, now it gets crazy because it'll take us a couple months. There'll be 10, 12, 15 different steps, kind of my dating analogy, right? I'm not going to go, hey, here's Mike, here's somebody I want you to go on a first date with. Well, I'm not asking you if you want to marry them. I'm just saying go have a cup of coffee. And even after that, we don't run to Vegas to get married. We've got to, you're vetting them, they're vetting you throughout that whole time. So sometimes even that research can morph once we start the connection to the franchises. Honestly, not a lot, but sometimes it does. And so it's again, it's not, I don't have to run the franchise. So it doesn't have to be what I want. It's our job to help you uncover what you want. And almost every time when you like, well, hey, I don't want this, or I do want this, we absolutely listen to all of those things, but there's also a part of my mind, I'm like, oh, that's cute. Mike thinks he wants these 2 or 3 things. We may look at it, but again, you'd just be amazed how often it's something completely different, but it just checks all of the boxes because we're building this out versus hunting. I've done this, I like that, therefore it's this. And because you might get lucky with that once in a while, but you are just throwing a dart at a big old board full of franchises versus flipping it around to figure out what you want and then having somebody help you find it.
A lot of people think that, when they get a franchise, that's it for the rest of their life. They're going to be a sandwich artist for the rest of their life or whatever. I have a really good friend of mine. She bought a franchise, a Nothing Bundt Cake franchise, and eventually bought a second store, or opened a second store, I should say, and then a third, and then eventually up to 7 across a couple of states. And then recently just sold 5 of her stores after it was no more than 5 years, between 4 and 5 years.
Yeah.
And she shared some of that information with me, and I'm like, oh my God, Tim, the return was absolutely amazing. So like any job or any business, I think it's good for the audience to realize that, this is not necessarily a forever decision. This can be, one can get into a franchise to secure a job, a regular job, or they can look at it as an investment opportunity. And I'm sure different franchises have different rules about, how quickly you can flip a store or whatever the case may be. But if it's done right, there's real equity in the business that you've managed to build, even though it's a franchise, and the franchise kind of owns the concept. There's still equity for the franchisee, and you're not stuck with that forever, right? I mean, there's always a way out, and it doesn't have to be a losing way out. It could be a very, like in her case, an exceptionally profitable way out.
Yeah, no, that's a hard thing for people to think about too, is start with the end in mind.
Right.
The end is you're going to sell it, right? And you said a word a minute ago, like job it's another kind of myth in franchising. Like franchise, I'm just buying a job. And for the longest time, I would try to explain to people how that wasn't true. And then finally I'm like, no, it's 100% true. So as a franchise owner, you are buying a job, but here's the difference. You're buying the exact job description that you want. You're in complete control of how it grows, because that job might be empire builder, where like your friend that has 7 stores, like she went in there making cakes, right? And probably, she might go weeks without ever stepping foot in any of her stores. Her job was empire builder, right?
Yes.
And then At the end of the job, whatever job somebody's working right now where you're getting that salary, when you're done with that job, and let's also understand it may not be your choice when you're done with that job, you don't get to sell it to the next person. You don't get to pass it on to your kids when you don't want that job anymore. Your business, that's your exit strategy. You're going to sell it. Is it in a year? Is it in 30 years? Is it one unit doing okay? Is it 100 that are, I had clients a few years ago that had 52 Taco Bells and then sold all 52 to a private equity group. Imagine that payout, folks, right?
Yeah.
Like over time, or you can have things where we'll see it all the time. Well, they'll pass it on to their kids, right? So it's wealth and equity that you're building. Yeah, you're making money along the way. You're doing exactly what you want around the people you want, and you're in control over all of it, right? So is that hard? Well, yeah, it's hard, but those are the benefits that you're getting long term. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because it is, people don't think about the exit, or they think about, even if it isn't going well, or you decided like, man, I've been doing this a couple of years, I don't want to do it anymore, then sell it, right? It is
Sure.
always the exit strategy. Now, again, your friend with 7 that are doing really well is going to make more on the sale than me over here with my 1 unit that's kind of average, but I'm still making money off of it in addition to what I've made along the way as that exit. It's always there for people.
Yeah. And clearly, the amount of money she got for those 5 stores was based on the fact that each of those 5 stores was making money. So, yeah, she was making money until she made a lot of money, right? So
Yes.
it's in that case, and she had zero experience in, she
Right.
wasn't a baker, but we talked earlier about working, you know, in your business and all that, and it's long been said by many business consultants, you want to work on your business, not in your business. And
Right.
at first, you have to work in your business, obviously, but she transitioned very quickly from working in her business to working on her business. In your words, empire building.
Yes. It's one of those things though that people like, it's fun to talk about. And we had a former client, he owns the entire state for his first franchise. He came back late last year. Now he's looking for a second brand. So he's a multi-unit, multi-brand owner, building an empire. Super amazing, super cool. And like literally there's no ceiling. You could just keep going. But some of the happiest franchise owners I've ever encountered are not the biggest. They are the ones that are, and it's a landscape franchise, and the guy, like, he still literally does the work. Happy as can be. The franchise wishes he wouldn't do the work.
Yeah.
They wish that he would grow a little bit, but the goal of any good franchisor is have happy franchisees.
Yeah.
So if he's happy and he's a little smaller, but he's living his best life, awesome, right? And so sometimes it gets people kind of turn their nose up at that a little bit, but who are we to say what makes somebody else happy? If he ever changed his mind, he's like, I want to get away from doing the work, he's going to have this whole team of people within the franchise to help him elevate and grow and ultimately exit. But again, that's why I kind of got to the point where I'm like, no, you're 100% buying a job. You're just buying the exact thing you want with all the right people you want to be around, that you're in control to build to what you want to build, and then sell when you're ready to not do it anymore. That's the job.
You mentioned that franchisors, really want happy franchisees. And I know from everything I've read about the Quiznos story, when the franchisor's life goes miserably wrong when they have a bunch of unhappy franchisees, which was the case at least for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, we definitely don't want that. Last question, Tim, because we're about out of time. How did you define success when you first started FranCoach, and how do you define it today?
At the beginning, my goal was just to eat, and to be able to kind of grow from there. I think really now it's turned into lifestyle, and yes, money's important. Money's always important, but I co-parent my son who's 12, and that's in a remote town in rural Arizona, because that's where his mom and all her family and everybody lives. So that means that's where I live half my life. But I also met my wife in franchising, which is a whole nother story. Um, that I can tell my version because she's not here because she's got a different one.
She
But
won't correct you. Yes.
no, yeah, and she won't listen, so it's totally fun. But she stalked me. It was really kind of embarrassing. But like, I we, we've been married, we've been together for about 7 years. She lives in Tampa, Florida. So I don't know if anybody's ever looked at a map, but Florida and Arizona aren't next to each other. So
Not right now.
I
No.
should have paid more attention. Geography, I should have paid more attention before we got into this. But I literally, my joke is I'm in Arizona for a week. I have custody of my son. Then I fly to Florida and I get custody of my wife for a week. And we go back and forth. And what existence besides this could I have that type of life? Right. And do we wish somewhere there was a way we could actually get together like, normal people? Yes. But like my kid's my kid, she's my person. Right. And she's got kids there. And so this is how it works. And so
Yeah.
for me, the success is that we built the team. The money drives the lifestyle, right? This is what I want. This is what I need to make everybody as happy as possible in my life. And what you'll find, and probably just all entrepreneurs, but I know in franchising too, it's the control over their life is what they really want. When you find the right fit, the money's just gonna follow. And for me, I stumbled, I got lucky. I found a pretty good fit for me. The money has followed, but it's then allowed me to really create the life that I want. And that's what's most important.
I've never, this is episode number 29, and the 28 people I've talked to before you all have different answers compared to their original definition of success to their current definition of success, which I'm grateful for, because usually it's like money, in your case, food, I'll translate that to money. That's how we define success. And then today it's always something a little bit higher level, like freedom, or the freedom to do what you want to do and pursue your dreams and all this stuff. So if it was money at first and money today, nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's not inspiring to me. So thanks for inspiring me. Yeah, that's
Well,
good.
I hope it. I hope it did. But it's also the fun part of what I do is I get to help people figure that out, right? And again, it's like what's good look like for you, and it doesn't matter for the next person. It's you, and it throws people off because looking at franchising and working with our team is a chance to just blank slate. And we say it all the time, and I know it sounds silly, but what do you want to be when you grow up? And we ask that and people kind of chuckle and whatever. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. That's really what we're going to figure out. You're not going to know the answer. That's why I get a transcript after a call is that I ask 50 something questions and the other person asked 4, because we weren't trying to build my life out. We were trying to build theirs.
Their life
And that's
out, yeah.
the focus always needs to be. The last thing I'll share with you, I tell people this all the time, it throws them off. I'm requiring you to be selfish going through this process. So when have we ever been told anything but the opposite, right?
Right.
Because this is, if you're our client, Mike, I'm talking to you, all that matters is you. You're the one that's got to get up and go do this every day. So don't live somebody else's life. It's got to be figuring out how to live your best one. And that's what we're going to help people with.
I'm guilty sometimes of asking multiple last questions. So I'm going to do that right now. One final last question. For those that are thinking about a franchise, like me, I have preconceived notions, right? And someone might have a preconceived notion that it costs millions of dollars. I want to buy a McDonald's franchise. Well, that's a few million, at least, or a Taco Bell or KFC or whatever. What, in your mind, you don't have to name the franchise companies, but what is a low barrier to entry, decent franchise looking for the right people? How little can someone expect to invest into a franchise?
So, first I want to define a term that's really important, and it's going to be total investment. And so if you're ever looking anywhere or talking to anybody and they're not discussing total investment, you're not talking to the right person.
That's build out, inventory, franchising fees, all of that?
It's 3 things. It's franchise fee. It's all of the cost to get the business open on day one. But then that's also going to include 3 months, sometimes up to 6 months operating capital once you're open. Okay.
Good.
So
Yep, smart move.
you think of all of those. I had somebody years ago, they're like, yeah, I want to own a Subway. I saw I could do it for 20 grand. I'm like, well, that's called the franchise fee. And even then that wasn't accurate, right?
Right.
But that's a $500,000 total investment. So you have to understand that. So I'm going to tell you, think of us on the low end, $100,000 total investment. That's going to be, we're going to be in the service realm, right? And we get into service or home service. Gosh, there's 50 different niches. But there's, hey, we're going to a home or a business. I got my person in the vehicle going out there. It's me and that person to start with. I'm doing sales and marketing and operations, and here's Bob in the truck going to do whatever, right? That's kind of the low end, but there's hundreds and hundreds of things that don't require retail space that are all, high end, like 250 down to $100,000 mark. And then it's not much different to get a loan for a franchise than it is to get a loan for a house. You need a little cash out of pocket. And we work with all the people that do the loans for this as well.
And SBA is a good resource, right?
Absolutely. And always, sometimes it's less, but I just think having 20% cash to loan, right? And so are there some ways to do it that are different, but that's the most common way. So even when you're looking at a $200,000 franchise total investment, well, I don't have $200,000. Well, you don't buy a house most people don't buy a house with cash.
Right. You might have 40 grand, which is 200 grand worth of borrowing.
Correct. And yes, there are people that buy franchises with cash and buy houses with cash, but for the rest of us, we have the cash to get us the funding. It is the exact same. So that it's so much more accessible and attainable than people realize. I mean, if you want a McDonald's, then yeah, you better be rolling in there with north of $500,000 in cash and a $2 or $3 million loan. But that's that extreme. What about all of these other things down here that the Taco Bell guys I mentioned really fast, they started, or there were two partners, their first business was carpet cleaning. They were literally the carpet cleaners and did everything and grew and scaled and then got something else and then something else and then got their first Taco Bell, right? They didn't start with 52 of those suckers. They worked from the bottom up. But again, you're in control of what that looks like. So, I got to start with a carpet cleaning franchise. Well, one, that might be perfect for you and be the best thing you've ever done in your life. But maybe that's the gateway to the growth down the road.
And for my audience that would like to find a great gateway for their growth down the road, I'll encourage you to look at the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, down here somewhere it says see more, and you'll see information on how to get a hold of Tim through FranCoach. I'll also have links to his podcast and his book. He wrote the book on franchising. I'll have all those things in the show notes. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, then when it's safe to do so, go to your podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Tim, thank you so much for being my guest today and talking about franchising. It's a fascinating subject, and I think it opens the door to self-employment, entrepreneurship, that the traditional, start from scratch mode just, it doesn't fit most people. And this, I think what you offer is a wider doorway into entrepreneurship than a more traditional path would take you. So thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your insight and your experience of your journey with me and my audience. I really appreciate it. And I wish you nothing but further success in the next 11 years. And I do expect maybe in 11 or 12 years from now, I'll get Tim Jr. on the show and ask him what it's like to take over a business from Dad.
Yes, I'm not holding a breath on that, but I'll definitely come back, Dan. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I love what you're doing, and thanks for having me on as a guest.
Well, my pleasure. Take care, Tim. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A special thanks to Tim Parmeter for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I'm excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know of an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest or to recommend a guest. Just remember, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Again, Conrad with a K. And a shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup, From Uncertainty to Unstoppable. It's available as a paperback as well as a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on both Audible and Amazon. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.